Okay, so today is Wednesday, the 18th, and I wanted to give everybody an update. I was able to schedule to do a online seminar through the Cleveland Clinic. It was an hour long question answer session was at the end. It was just kind of going over the steps that you need to take. They have different processes. You need to be cleared by a psychologist. You need to be cleared medically and nutritionally. So the good news for me is that I am already on that path of nutrition. I decided to start out with the non-surgical route that Cleveland Clinic offers. It was about 10 months ago when I started that. And I have at that point a nutritionist that we go over things like diet and exercise and good foods versus bad foods. We go over building your plate with appropriate portions, weighing things out. What are better alternatives, maybe for things that I maybe don't like personally, or for things that would better fit my medical issues, and maybe promote some better weight loss and some structure, really. And then I would also have like a doctor, CNP, a PA, that type of stuff. That would be able to prescribe medications, which we did. We did several different medication regimens, and we'll get into that a little later. But the seminar was actually the hour long like lunch break seminar was actually really great. It was people that I'm assuming are just like me and wanted to take the surgical path that Cleveland Clinic has to offer, whether or not they're already a patient and decided to go from non-surgical to surgical, or whether they're brand new and they just want to go the surgical route and they don't want to mess with non-surgical. Everybody has their different reasons and everybody has their different pathways. But it went over the different types of surgeries that are most commonly done at the Cleveland Clinic and are more everyday type of surgeries as opposed to special ones that are specifically designed for patients and or something that is a little bit less common in the United States or at the Cleveland Clinic anyway. But they did encourage you that if you are looking into this path, to get a hold of them, contact them. They have a lot of options. There's nothing really off the table as long as you're working with a doctor and a surgeon, and they understand that every case is different. So it was kind of heartwarming for that. So I did want to take a minute and kind of go backwards in my journey today and discuss like where I started and kind of go way back to like childhood me. I know it's weird, but currently I am 36 years old. I will be 37 in January. So I am quickly approaching midlife, and I want to kind of give you the background on where I started and where my weight started when I was younger and how I developed those things. So let's start back in 1987. That was the year I was born. I was born early. I was born at 26 weeks. So really, really early. I was teeny tiny. There is actually a picture somewhere where my grandfather's hand is here and I am just like sitting in it. It is like a little tiny baby, a little teeny tiny doll. My mom actually told me that they used to dress me in doll clothes because those fit and normal infant clothes didn't. I was in preemie diapers for a long time. I weighed 1.5 pounds. So think about a package of hamburger, not the roll, but the roll plus half another roll. And that was I was a child, like I was a living being, and I weighed 1.5 pounds. It was quite impressive. I spent a very long time in the hospital when I was little. I want to say it was about 3 months that I spent at OSU. From what my mom said, they were really fantastic and great. I was able to come home eventually. I had oxygen. I had a breathing machine thingy that gave me my oxygen. It was like what I equate to now as a on-demand oxygen device. So it had like the valve that would push the air in. It would force the little bursts of air, which is not necessarily something that is so common now with all of the new technology, but it was something that was extremely common back then. So I had that. I did breathing treatments until I was about 3, maybe 4. I was back and forth a few times for things like pneumonia. I had childhood asthma. Obviously, my lungs were very underdeveloped when I was that age and being that little. One of the treatments that they had back in 1987 for babies that were born early that were not fully developed was giving them steroids. And as we may or may not know, as you may or may not know, it depends on, I guess, your medical situations. But steroids are fantastic. They make everything better. And sometimes I really do think that the doctors don't know why it makes it better, but it does. And steroids are great for that. They're also not so great. I know as an adult, I've been on multiple doses of steroids over the years. And one of the things that I struggle with so much when I'm on a dose of steroids, even if it's a taper pack where you have like one and then you go up and then you go back down in dosage, I struggle with literally shoving my face with any type of food that I have, that I see. If I see it, I want to eat it. If I don't see it, I'm thinking about what I want to eat. The steroids make me so hungry. So steroids are really hard for me. So I can only imagine the little teeny tiny me was in that place, and I was trying to obviously put on weight because, again, I weighed 1.5 pounds. I was so teeny tiny. So go fast forward a bit. When I was, I think I grew up to be a fairly normal small child, like in the 5 range. There's pictures of me going to kindergarten, and I looked fairly normal. I didn't have any deficits as far as learning disabilities or any physical limitations at that point. So that was really great. I think I definitely beat the odds, and I'm very happy for that. I couldn't have done it without my parents and their strong belief in medicine and their trust in the doctors at OSU and those doctors and nurses. I was kind of a light in their working life. Mom said that some of the nurses would come and visit me every night, even if I wasn't on their rotation. They would come and visit me, or they'd come and hold me, or they'd come and whatever, just to, give Mom a break and to give me something else to do. And I think they really enjoyed that from what I understood. Of course, I don't remember any of that, but moving on, I think going into being a young child, from the 5 to 10-year-old range, everything was normal as far as I know. When I grew up, I remember this very distinctively growing up. We actually lived in a regular house, and my dad's dad was ill. So my grandfather was ill, and he was older. He actually lived on our property, but lived like 2 football fields behind our house. So about 200, 300 yards behind our house in a trailer. And he lived back there, and he would come up and join us for dinner every night. My grandpa was very old school, very old school. My dad, if any of you knew my dad was kind of old school too. But my grandpa was very old school, and we ate dinner at 6 o'clock on the dot in the drop top, like period, dot, end of discussion. It was 6 o'clock, and that was it. There was no 6:01. There was no 6:30. There was no, I'm running kind of late. None of that. I mean, none of it. It was 6 o'clock. And he was up there at 5:55 at the house just to make sure that he wasn't going to miss 6 o'clock dinner. It just wasn't a thing. So my mom and dad would do the cooking, and my grandpa, my brother and I, and my mom and dad would all sit down and have family dinner. That was a very important part of our life growing up. And I love the idea of family dinner. I think it's important. I think it's awesome. I think that it really promotes togetherness, and it promotes family, the family unit. And I love the idea of that. What I didn't necessarily love, now that I'm way older, was all of the every meal was a meat and a potato and bread. Always. Always, always, always. There was always a vegetable somewhere in there, whether it was mixed vegetables or whether it was stewed tomatoes. We'll get into a story about that later. It was always something. There was always a vegetable of some kind. And there was always milk. My brother and I always had to drink a glass of milk with dinner. Okay, we're grown kids, whatever. As we got older, we would put things on our plate. We were allowed to put our own stuff on our plate. What we put on our plate, we ate. There was no excuses. It didn't matter if you thought you were hungrier than you were. Again, old school. That's the old school thing. That's probably the way my parents were raised. So that's the way that I was raised, that you don't not eat. You put it on your plate, you eat it, you don't waste it. I remember sitting at the table one night for a very long time until like 9 o'clock at night because I wouldn't drink my milk. It was terrible. I wanted to throw up because I had eaten so much food that I was so overly full that if I drank anything else, I was going to vomit. So I didn't want to do that, obviously. So I didn't. I sat there until 9 o'clock at night until I finally drank my milk. Needless to say, I was a little more cautious after that, what I put on my plate. So oddly enough, I was that kid. Apparently, I used to eat butter, like the Country Crock butter, by the spoonful. I don't remember that. I always was in the kitchen helping when I could with my mom, and I used to make chocolate chip cookies all the time. It was like you could go to Sam's Club or wherever, and they had that big box. Like it was huge, a huge box of basically powdered cookie mix with chocolate chips. And you would just put it in a bowl and you'd throw in like eggs or water or eggs and water, maybe some oil. It was just basically a box mix, but it was like a bajillion servings. And you would stir it all up. I remember making chocolate chip cookies for many, many years with my mom, and we would use that powdered mix. And I remember stirring until I couldn't stir anymore because it was just too much for my arms. But of course, I mean, I would always lick the bowl. Duh. It's the best part. So, we were never shy for any type of vegetables in our house. Hold on. Okay, so one of the things as a child I always helped in the kitchen. It was really great to see my mom and dad cook. And that was something that I took with me for a lot of years was, being able to cook, being able to be in the kitchen and being able to put good food on the table. That was super important to me. So also growing up, we went outside and played and stuff like that. Playing and not having the video games all the time was a thing that was really part of my childhood. We would climb trees. I mean, I sucked at that. I have like zero coordination in real life. If you knew me in real life, zero coordination. I mean, zero. So we would play outside, my brother and I, whatever. And as we grew older, I was not the cool one to play with. That's cool. And of course, I got hormonal and moody and blah, 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 whatever. So we were always outside playing. We had Dalmatians, not like all at the same time, but we had one that I remember. Her name was Pepper. We're original, so original. And she was great. She was great. She was so fun and so protective. We also had, garage cats or barn cats, whatever you call them, stray cats that just kind of appeared. We fed them, and then there were a bunch of them. So we would always play outside. We were always outside. Always, always, always. And I think that was a thing of my childhood that maybe is not so much a thing now. And of course, as we got older, we did more things like video games and computers and stuff like that. But they didn't have phones back then like we do now. They had those Motorola phones that were like this long, like the size of your face. And they had the flip up. You had to pull the antenna out. And they were like this thick on the, like this thick front to back. They were terrible. But that was what we had back then. So that was cool. And we didn't get those until we started driving. We didn't get phones until we started driving. And they were for emergencies only. Then phones became more of a normal thing. So that was the thing. But we were always outside. We were always playing. We were always running around doing whatever. It was a normal childhood for me. And as far as eating, it was very scheduled. We would have breakfast. I would have lunch. We'd have dinner. It just there wasn't a whole lot of variation. There was always snacks around. There's always whatever. If we wanted to eat it, it was fine. Pop was a thing too. Not so much early on, but definitely later in my life. And that's still a thing. It's still a thing today. But I think that for me, I started noticing changes in the way that I carried my weight around probably 9 years old or so. 9 years old, maybe 10. I started noticing that I was developing different places and carrying extra weight in different places. So I think that from, once I got past being a preemie, a teeny tiny, to going through about 10 years old, everything was fairly normal. I mean, and of course I had childhood eating habits, eating the butter, for instance. We would, we definitely didn't go hungry. That's for sure. There was always something available if we wanted it. Drinking water was definitely not a thing that I did a lot of. And I was definitely not a sports player. If anyone knows me in real life, like playing sports and running, it was never a thing for me. I don't know if it was the asthma, if it was I don't like running, whatever the case was, but it was just not a thing for me, not ever. I played soccer when I was little. Apparently I was pretty crappy at it. I think the sport that I really got into was softball. Softball was a sport for me. It was fun and I really enjoyed it. I wasn't terrible at it, so that was an A+. So I think that's where we'll stop for today. And don't forget, if you like this video, like, subscribe, continue to follow me. We'll talk about adolescence the next time. And if you have any questions, reach out. Feel free to comment. Don't forget the sleeve and me, with all the periods in between, because it's the only way I could be original. The rest of them were taken. So again, if you like what you see, like and subscribe, and we'll talk more about adolescence and what comes with that next time. Have a great day.